down her lawyer's objections, and even allowed secret meetings with the prosecution that violated legal ethics. His rulings were suspiciously one-sided, making it Grayson's fall from power to prisoner. No, 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 you don't understand, Grayson protested as the agents pulled him up from his chair. His once confident voice now quivered with panics. We understand perfectly, the agent said, tightening the handcuffs around Grayson's wrists. You've been selling justice to the highest bidder, and now you're finally paying for it. The entire courtroom watched as Grayson was hauled out in disgrace, his black judge's robe flaring behind him like a villain being dragged off stage. He was led away. Reporters shouted questions. Judge Grayson, how long have you been taking bribes? Were you targeting Karoline Leavitt on orders from Washington insiders? What do you say to the people whose lives you've ruined? Leavitt walks free. The lead federal agent turned to Judge's stunned assistant. Given the conflict of interest, this trial is now null and void, he announced. Gasps turned into cheers. Leavitt stood, her shoulders straight, as her supporters erupted in applause. Her attorney smiled. Looks like we won after all. Leavitt nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. She had fought against corruption and won, but she knew this wasn't the end. There were more battles ahead. As she walked out of the courthouse, free and vindicated, she knew one thing for sure. Justice had finally caught. For nearly 3 decades, Judge Thomas Grayson had reigned supreme in his courtroom. He wasn't just a judge. He was a king. He controlled verdicts with a flick of his wrist, crushed careers with a single ruling, and accepted bribes with the confidence of a man who believed he was above the law. Politicians, lobbyists, and corporate elites all knew the deal. If you wanted a case to swing your way, you didn't hire the best lawyer. You paid off Judge Grayson. And he was more than happy to oblige, as long as the price was right. But now, he was about to oversee the most high-profile case of his career, the trial of Karoline Leavitt, a young, ambitious conservative star who was gaining national recognition. And this time, Grayson wasn't just doing it for money. He was doing it for power. Corrupt judge tries to destroy Karoline Leavitt. Moments later, he's hauled out in handcuffs. Judge Thomas Grayson had ruled his courtroom like a king for decades. Known for his harsh sentences and backroom dealings, he had the power to make or break anyone who stood before him. Leavitt had been falsely accused of campaign finance violations, a charge orchestrated by her political enemies. Judge Grayson, a known ally of her rivals, was determined to take her down. He sneered from the bench, his gavel striking like a hammer of doom. This court finds Miss Leavitt guilty on all counts, he declared, his voice dripping with arrogance. Gasps filled the courtroom. Leavitt's attorneys stood frozen in shock. The evidence against her had been flimsy at best, and yet here was Grayson, ready to destroy her career with a single ruling. This court finds Miss Leavitt guilty on all counts, he declared, his voice dripping with arrogance. Gasps filled the courtroom. Leavitt's attorneys stood frozen in shock. The evidence against her had been flimsy at best, and yet here was Grayson, ready to destroy her career with a single ruling. But just as he was about to finalize the sentencing, a commotion erupted in the back of the courtroom. The doors burst open, and in stormed federal agents. Judge Thomas Grayson, you are under arrest for bribery, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power, an FBI agent announced, flashing his badge. Grayson's face drained of color. This is a mistake, he stammered, rising from his seat. The agent smirked. I don't think so. We have wiretaps, financial records, and witness testimonies. You sold your rulings for political favors, and now it's time to pay the price. Handcuffs clicked around Grayson's wrists as the entire courtroom watched in stunned silence. He was hauled away, his legacy crumbling in an instant. Leavitt stood tall, victorious. Justice had prevailed. Not just for her, but for every innocent person Judge Grayson had ever wronged. For years, Judge Thomas Grayson had operated in the shadows, using his power to sway cases in favor of those who lined his pockets. Politicians, corporate executives, and corrupt officials all knew one thing. If you had enough money or influence, Grayson could make legal problems disappear or create it. But his latest target, Karoline Leavitt, wasn't just another name on a case file. She was a rising conservative firebrand, known for her no-nonsense approach and commitment to exposing corruption. She had powerful enemies in Washington, and they were desperate to silence her before she could gain